Hello everyone, Crime Recapped here. Today I will show you action, comedy and crime 2010 movie called The Other Guys. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and stay safe. Officers Park Highsmith and Chris Danson are the most badass cops that New York City has ever seen. The movie opens with them engaged in a high-speed chase, creating a wanton destruction path of every block that they cross. They do manage to capture the criminals at high speeds. However, the infraction they picked them up for was very minor and they managed to do a lot of damage. They are also hailed as heroes and are given the key to the city by the mayor. Back at the station they're also greeted as heroes and treated like celebrities. There's several pairs of officers including Martin and Fosse, Officer Bob, who makes announcements about banal activities at inappropriate times, and the other guys, Alan Gamble and Terry Hoyts. They're admired by Alan Gamble, a by-the-numbers forensic accountant who is very straight-laced and doesn't take any risks. Gamble's partner Terry Hoyts disagrees and he's grown tired of his desk job and wants to see some real hardcore action. To make matters worse, Gamble is duped into a prank by fellow officers Martin and Fosse by firing his gun randomly in the air and he has it taken away. Hoyts also had his gun taken away thanks to a past incident involving working security at Game 7 of the World Series and shooting Derek Jeter in the process. Thanks to that incident, he has unwittingly earned the nickname the Yankee Clipper. Gamble also has earned an unflattering nickname around the office, Paper Bitch. At a support group for gun abuse, Hoyts and Gamble don't know why they're there and Hoyts doesn't want to be there. The next day Highsmith and Danson are called into the field. This case has them chasing suspects in a jewelry store robbery. Once again they're chasing a suspect robbing a jewelry store up a high-rise. The robber manages to escape using a zip line, and to follow him, they're planning to jump off a high-rise and into the bushes. Unfortunately they miss and hit the pavement instead. No one really knows why they decided to jump. They're given a hero's funeral by the city of New York. Without their hottest officers, the department turns to Hoyts and Gamble instead. At the funeral Hoyts and Gamble nearly start a brawl with some of the other detectives. Hoyts decides that the void left by Highsmith and Danson needs to be filled and that someone is them. Hoyts desperately wants a taste of action. But unfortunately as he's paired with Gamble, Gamble is obsessed with a case involving faulty scaffolding being installed at a construction site. But then they get a call about shots being fired and cocaine at the scene. Hoyts forces Gamble out of the office to take to the case. As they finally get some field work, Hoyts discovers that Gamble is even lamer than he originally thought. Their first taste of action ends incredibly poorly when Gamble floors the accelerator on his red Prius and crashes into the crime scene. We are then introduced to billionaire investor David Ershon. Hoyts is still demeaning Gamble about everything he does isn't manly enough. They also berate Officer Bob about the company picnic next week. They then meet Ershon at the construction site. Gamble arrests Ershon but fails to read his Miranda rights properly. While transporting Ershon back to the station, Gamble has an accident with some very suspicious people who then steal Gamble's Prius and kidnap Ershon. Gamble and Hoyts decide that they need a fresh start while wandering the streets of New York City. Back at the station, they have a new case and that's to find out who kidnapped Ershon. Hoyts goes over to Gamble's house where he learns more about Gamble, including the fact that Gamble has a supermodel wife named Sheila, who also happens to be a well-respected doctor. Gamble acts like it's no big deal. Gamble learns who stole his Prius and it turns out that when it was stolen some homeless people performed some very unspeakable acts in the back seat. They also find Gamble's lost iPhone. The group of homeless people is known as Dirty Mike and the Boys. The bad news about Gamble's car just keeps coming. Gamble and Hoyts then go to interview the next witness, who also happens to be a former ex-girlfriend of Gamble's, another unbelievably attractive woman. However, she is married and Hoyts manages to offend the woman by mispronouncing her name. Hoyts really wants to know what Gamble's deal with hot ladies is. While sitting in the Prius, they get a message from Ershon. The next day while at a local bar singing about their woes, Gamble and Hoyts discover that Ershon is up to something involving the state lottery and some suspicious activity. Hoyts then goes to meet with his girlfriend, a dance instructor, who it turns out he has some issues with. Unfortunately Gamble awkwardly shows up and makes things worse than they were. The next day driving into the city, Gamble and Hoyts have an incredibly awkward moment which ends with another fight and Gamble playing his favorite music, the Little River Band. They go to the next stop on their list, another accounting firm, which ends with the storefront they're going to exploding. Gamble is tired of the explosions and gunfights and wants to go back to his desk. Hoyts on the other hand disagrees and tells Gamble that life is loud and has incidents like this. Gamble then reveals about his past in college. He was essentially a glorified pimp. He made money working security for the college's attractive women and was very well paid. He attracted a huge group of women to his flock and earned the real nickname of Gator. He decided to leave that life behind after an incident where he went to the emergency room and met Shalia, who he would later go on to marry, and that's why he's as straight-laced as he is. After that they go to meet Ershon, back at his accounting firm. They confront Ershon about his penny pinching and they don't know what he's up to with the state lottery, but they definitely suspect that he's up to something, they just can't quite put their finger on it. Ershon offers them a bribe of courtside seats to the latest Knicks game, but they don't know that it's actually a bribe. The next day Ershon ups the ante by offering them tickets to the musical Jersey Boys. Hoyts and Gamble learn that Ershon has employed some incredibly shady losses to cover his tracks on some bad investments. But Hoyts' aggressive tactics don't exactly earn him points. While at Ershon's offices they're confronted by some incredibly shady people in the parking lot. Hoyts and Gamble are then kidnapped and are being transported on a train in Gamble's Prius. They call the station and their captain, where they tell them that they're in Las Vegas and were transported by train there. The captain then grills them about laying off Ershon despite that he's committed some criminal activity. Back at the station, the captain is grilling Hoyts and Gamble about their investigation into Ershon Construction and Ershon's shady business practices. The captain has a change of heart and removes Gamble's wooden gun but gives him a whistle as a replacement. The captain then orders all the evidence they have on Ershon turned over to the FBI. Later they're given orders about the police pension fund and that there's a vote being held on it next week. Hoyts then goes to his girlfriend's art gallery, which ends extremely poorly when he manages to trash a piece of very expensive modern art, which he doesn't know is modern art. Meanwhile at Gamble's house, he is discussing the case with Shalia and that he's essentially done with that. Shalia reveals that she's pregnant and that causes Gamble to get in a fight, which she then kicks him out of the house. Later the next night, Gamble and Hoyts decide that they're both depressed about their troubles with their women and don't know what to do next. They're also confronted by Dirty Mike and the boys. After that they decide to go on a bender to end all benders. Hoyts and Gamble then go to interview the next witness, who happens to be Ershon's lawyer. Unfortunately they accidentally hand all of the evidence they've gathered against Ershon over to him. Back at the station, Hoyts is extremely angry about the fact that they just handed over all the evidence. They then get a call over the police banner about a possible jumper from a high-rise. Gamble tells Hoyts that he has previous experience about hostage negotiation. But it ends rather poorly when Gamble gets on the PA and has an extremely poor choice of words that has the jumper jumping. The jumper also happened to work for Ershon. The incident has Gamble and Hoyts losing their partnership and they're then demoted. We hear a monologue from Highsmith about what a man has to do to pick himself up once he gets his ass kicked. Gamble is still obsessed about the conspiracy theory involving Ershon and the lottery. Gamble thinks that the jewelry heist that Danson and Highsmith were chasing was actually a distraction for an even bigger robbery taking place behind the scenes. He investigates exactly what the thieves were doing when they took such a small amount of diamonds and escaped using a 20-story military-grade zipline. Gamble reveals that Ershon is covering his tracks by using 2 accounting firms and that he needs to be arrested for grand larceny. Hoyts tells Gamble that he's no longer interested in the case and that he enjoys working traffic. Gamble then forces Hoyts at gunpoint that he needs his partner to be on his case. Hoyts and Gamble then go to confront the captain while working at his alternate job at Bed, Bath, and Beyond. The captain is working the second job to pay his son's obscene college tuition. Hoyts and Gamble formulate a plan to take down Ershon by confronting him at his construction company. At Ershon's company he is having a meeting with his stockholders about the company's future. One of the investors happens to be fellow officer Bob, who they berated earlier about a proxy vote. Hoyts has come to a revelation that they're targeting the police pension fund. A massive shootout ensues. They get in a car chase involving Ershon and Gamble's completely destroyed Prius while his lame taste in easy listening music prevails. Ershon then reveals his involvement in some incredibly shady activity. They then take Ershon to his very small apartment. Ershon reveals that a money transfer is going to be involved and that the money involved goes directly to the police pension fund. Gamble then goes to reconcile his differences with Shalia, while Hoyts goes to reconcile his differences with his girlfriend. Meanwhile, officers Martin and Fosse are lecturing a class of school children about poor decisions they will make in their lives and follows the call from Gamble and Hoyts. The next morning it's time for the bank transfer. Gamble of course has the proper soundtrack and his lame taste in easy listening music once again prevails. Gamble then shocks everyone with some high-speed driving in his Prius. Ershon is then pursued by another group of shady people. The chase ends with them on a golf course driving range and they manage to destroy the helicopter. The other officers are also in pursuit of Ershon and manage to get to the transfer before it happens. They hold the investors at gunpoint and manage to arrest everyone involved. Ershon is arrested and taken into custody. It's revealed that he is using his time in prison to make investments and further his shady accounting practices. Hoyts and Gamble are hailed as heroes for their ability to bring Ershon to justice. Thankfully, Gamble's smartphone app was able to nail most of the criminals involved in the transfer. Hoyts manages to marry his girlfriend and wanted Shalia to be his best man, but she declines for very obvious reasons. While getting food at Nathan's on Coney Island, Gamble and Hoyts are greeted by none other than Derek Jeter. Jeter tells Hoyts that he was set up the night he was shot, and gives them their next assignment. Their next case involves the biggest shady investment firm in the world, Goldman Sachs, and where Gamble once again manages to attract another hot woman. While leaving, Hoyts very badly wants to know what Gamble's secret is, and Gamble reveals who he lost his virginity to, none other than supermodel Heather Locklear, and this is how the film ends. Let us know which movie should we go back and recap next in the comments down below and consider hitting that subscribe button if you liked our video.